Hey guys, this is Poohead189, and today we're going to be doing a classic video on breaking down the power levels of every fighter in the Android arc. First, let me say the thumbnail was made by a new friend of the channel and mine named Liz. I asked for people to help me with a thumbnail on Twitter, and she actually made one, which I did not expect, so thanks so much, Liz. Alright, now to preface this video, we need to acknowledge a few key things. First, a lot of strength in Toriyama's work is relative. A character can blow up a planet, but that might be super weak in comparison to other characters. A character could have a new transformation, but that gets outstripped super quick. Some characters are called super strong, but they're actually kinda weak. And while statements are the best ways to determine strength, statements only work if they are not contradicted by feats, and they work best when supported by feats. Secondly, we need to acknowledge that using mathematics for most of this video will end up with findings that will simply not make sense. I will use math a little bit at the beginning, since we are stepping out of the era of scouters, but most of the video I will instead use a ranking system of letters, from E, being the weakest, all the way to A, of course, and past that will be an S tier for the strongest of the entire arc. Now, I will say who is stronger than who, but I'm adding the letter system so we don't have some long string of names with who is above who is above who. Additionally, in association with my statement on math, I will also not be ranking Goku, Vegeta, or Trunks in base form, as while the Daizenshu states that the Super Saiyan transformation has a 50 times multiplier, if we keep that in mind here, we will also end up with findings that don't make sense. Something else we have to acknowledge is, whilst some of these power rankings will be pretty intuitive, others can only really come about from having discussed them over and over and over again for years and years, as I have with my friends and all manner of other fans. However, while we agree on a lot, meaning me and my team, there's always one or two things Dave, Clearin, and I disagree on. And so I need to state that the rankings in this video do not reflect the rankings of my brothers across the pond or any other fans. This is purely of my own making. And lastly, we have to discuss what exactly the Android Saga is. Well, different people have different opinions, but for the purposes of this video, and from what I, myself, consider the Android Saga, we will be discussing the power levels after Trunks' warning to Goku and company, and go until Piccolo fused with Kami meets Imperfect Cell, as that instance kicks off the Cell arc. However, while that is what I consider the Android arc, I will extend the scope of the video to include up to Android 16 versus Imperfect Cell because of Android 16 specifically, as he is ever present throughout most of the Android Saga, but does not fight until then. And so from right after Trunks until Android 16 versus Cell will be our area of judgment. So, with all that being said, let us begin. Let's start with E tier. This, as I stated, is for the weakest fighters, but we do need to acknowledge this is purely for fighters. Bulma is not a fighter, as her skills lie in other areas, and Chi-Chi, though she is a fighter, has also taken up the life of a civilian and a mother, and so this is only for those who are prepared, even in some small way, to fight for the Earth. On the lower end of E tier is Kami and Yajirobe. True, Yajirobe only came by to give senzu beans, but Bulma clearly believed he could do something, and his excuse was not from cowardice, but from not being able to fly. In the guidebooks, Yajirobe has a power level of 970 in the Saiyan arc, and it's unlikely he has gained some massive boost in strength since then. And Kami's power level last he fought in the 23rd tournament was 220, according to the guidebooks. Again, it is doubtful he has increased his power level by a large margin, though we should note that Mr. Popo's power level did shoot up between the 23rd tournament and the fight with Vegeta and Nappa, so the same could be said for Kami, potentially. However, both Kami and Yajirobe are still the weakest fighters from every angle we can see. Next is Chaozu, of course. It is difficult to determine just how strong Chaozu is, particularly since he spent the most time at King Kai's besides Tien, and he can handle 10 times gravity just fine. However, unlike the Saiyan invasion, Chaozu does not show up for this fight, as Tien deemed him too weak to make a difference, and so while he is very likely magnitudes above Kami and Yajirobe, and is in upper E tier, he is still in E tier. Now let's move on to D. This tier is for the human fighters, and firstly we have Yamcha. Now the problem with the human fighters are the contradictory statements we get on their involvement. During the Trunks arc, Piccolo tells everyone to not even bother showing up unless they think they will be useful, hence why Chaozu did not show up. And seeing as they saw Trunks kill Mecha Frieza and King Cold, and Trunks is still overpowered by the androids, useful in this context means at least stronger than Frieza or his father. Now, some fans have a difficult time believing that humans could achieve that in 3 years' time on Earth, with no gravity machine or special master. Ten Shinhan marvels that Trunks got defeated by Android 18 so easily when he was the one who killed Frieza. At first, this adds a problem, as if Tien still thinks Frieza is some immense power. However, soon after, Krillin asks Goku if he is scared of facing Cell, as Cell is even stronger than Frieza, and we know for a fact that Goku is far stronger than every iteration of Frieza we have seen thus far, so why would Krillin even ask that? This leads me to believe that when people reference Frieza's power level, they're referencing it to simply mean a huge threat, rather than a concrete number. However, what does this mean for Yamcha's power level? Well, Yamcha did show up, which meant he obviously believed he could be helpful in some way, yet he was also taken out easily by Android 20. However, we also need to note that Yamcha was caught completely off guard by Android 20, and did not understand the strange powers the androids had, but this still confuses the issue. So how strong is Yamcha exactly? Well, this is going to be the one and only time I'm going to really do some math. So, when Android 19 and 20 discover Yamcha in the city, they believe he is Goku at first. And though Android 19 and 20's power readers are not always accurate, so this might not be a great empirical measurement, let's explore that. When both of those same androids face off against Goku, they state they are not worried fighting Goku, as they have calculated Goku's maximum progression of strength over the years he was gone. And at this point, it's been nearly 5 years since his fight against Nappa and Vegeta. During the Saiyan Saga, Goku's full power when arriving at the battlefield was over 8,000, and so let's be simple and make his power level 8,100. And Goku's increase at King Kai's was roughly a 19 times increase. Now, it stands to reason Gero does not know the specifics of the afterlife, but he could surmise that there is some special way of developing strength there. Now, I don't think Gero is going to assume Goku can increase his power level that much every year, but it stands to reason Goku's progression is now much higher than it was. So let's go a little below half of that number, which I think is sort of a healthy middle ground between Goku's multiplier and the multiplier of the humans when they got training from Kami. And so let's say Gero thinks Goku can increase his strength by, say, 7 times every year over the course of nearly 5 years. So if we take the power level of 8,100, that number comes out to 136,136,700, which would be a bit above 100% full power Frieza on Namek. And since they thought that Yamcha was Goku earlier, this could be Yamcha's power level. Now, is this number definitive? Absolutely not. However, the reason I did that math is to showcase a believable number, right? And if that progression is believable, then that means the humans surpassing Frieza or even getting near to it is plausible. And so we can likely surmise that Yamcha and Krillin can easily be close to Frieza's strength or above. Now, previously in the manga, Krillin has been either Yamcha's strength or stronger by a small margin. The weird difference here is that Yamcha did training in the afterlife, and Krillin did not. Krillin's power comes from either training on Earth or Guru's potential unlock. And something we need to note about Guru's potential unlock ability was that it did not all happen at once. Krillin and Gohan's power increased over the Namek and Frieza sagas both, until it halted near the end, but the Daizenshu and various comments in the manga back this up, that their powers were continually increasing. And though we don't know too much about an actual power level for Yamcha or Krillin, we can safely say they are easily Frieza strength, maybe even above Mecha Frieza, though we do need to remember that Future Trunks has likely not improved drastically since we last saw him, and Mecha Frieza might be pushing it for the humans a bit, but they are still very likely somewhere around Frieza's strength or above, and are solidly in the D tier. Tin Shinhan, however, is a loaded question. Full disclosure, I am going to have him stronger than most do, but I do it for good reasons, and before we get into them, I do want to address the statements that indicate Krillin is stronger than him. The first is a manga panel of Yamcha comforting young Marin, saying Krillin is the strongest Earthling, which in my opinion has a few problems, but that is still a statement in the manga. And the other one is a statement in an interview in the early 2000s, I think 2003. Now, people often say that Toriyama stated Krillin was the strongest Earthling, but that's not true. The interviewer stated that, and Toriyama just said yes. But even if we take both at face value, I need to point out that Yamcha's statement and Toriyama's statement are far after the Android arc, either during the Buu saga or after the end of the manga, so neither count for this period of time. Before this arc, Tien has consistently been stronger than Krillin when given the same training opportunities, and considering Tien was not only training at Kinkai's longer than anyone else, but Tien is generally portrayed as being a more powerful figure, I am having Tien stronger than Krillin and Yamcha in this saga. And this makes sense in context of the saga for various scenes. When Android 19 and 20 show up and Yamcha is mortally wounded, they get Krillin to fly him away and Tien stays to fight. When Piccolo has fused with Kami and is searching for Cell, Tien accompanies him, while Trunks and Krillin are doing the less dangerous task of destroying Jiro's lab. And though Tien has watched the fights between Goku, Vegeta, and Piccolo against androids 19 and 20, and he does say he is uneasy about Piccolo and Vegeta having gotten so strong, it's only after the entire group gets beaten by androids 17 and 18 does Tien state that he thinks he won't be of much use. And of course, we also know that is not the case later on when he holds back Cell. And so while Krillin and Yamcha are in D tier, I am putting Tien in C tier, and he is potentially the only character in C tier. I think one of the trickiest characters to judge on power is Gohan, because though after the time chamber he is the strongest of the heroes, beforehand, he not only does nothing except knock away a distracted Dr. Gero off of Piccolo, but he is generally sent away from the battlefield when at all possible. Now, on Namek, Gohan was usually a small step ahead of Krillin after the potential unlock, and that stayed consistent throughout the arc, or both sagas, I guess. And considering he did train with Piccolo and Goku, I will put Gohan in upper D tier, or maybe lower C tier. Okay, so now that that's done, let's get into the big leagues. In B tier, we have androids 19 and 20 around the lower end. It's clear from the text that both androids provide a threat, albeit a minor one, to a well-trained Super Saiyan. It is difficult to gauge how problematic they would be to fight against Namek Saga Super Saiyan Goku or Super Saiyan Trunks, but as long as a trained Super Saiyan can wear them out and does not have a lot of their energy absorbed, they can defeat either of them. Now, there is some contention on who is stronger between androids 19 and 20, and though many people say android 20 is stronger because he states it, the feats do not match that. Android 19 does better against both Goku and Vegeta than 20 does against Piccolo, with his weights removed at least. Although I do not subscribe to the idea that Android 19 is stronger either, because there is no reason Gero would do that, really, unless there is a complication and he cannot add too much power to his aged body. It's uncertain. However, both androids are in the lower to middle B tier. I'm going to say lower B tier. Next, we have Piccolo, before he fused with Kami, and Future Trunks. Obviously, Piccolo, when fully ready and without his weights, is more than a match for Android 20, but Trunks is a trickier matter. Trunks never fights either android, and only engages in the brawl with androids 17 and 18, though we do need to note that both Piccolo and Future Trunks are struck twice by the androids before they fully go down. Both are hit once, and then get back up again. Trunks going after 18 to save Vegeta, and Piccolo attacking 17 to help Tien. Now, when Piccolo goes up to fuse with Kami, Kami does act like Trunks is near the same level as Vegeta and Goku, but the feats match Piccolo more, and so I'll say that future Trunks is around Piccolo's strength, with potentially a slight edge towards Trunks. And while androids 19 and 20 are in lower to middle B tier, Trunks and Piccolo are in upper B tier. Next up are Goku and Vegeta in the lower end of A tier. As I stated, just like Trunks, I am only counting them in their Super Saiyan forms here. And while I am talking about Goku, I mean Goku without the heart virus. And while it's true we don't see him fight without the heart virus, it's clear he and Vegeta are near equal strength. Goku was still winning against 19 until he fired the Kamehameha, allowing 19 to replenish its energy while Goku was rapidly losing his own from the virus. That, and though there are multiple characters that mention Vegeta might have surpassed Goku, they still leave it as an open question, meaning both Goku and Vegeta are near enough for them to be unsure. Both of them are clearly stronger than the androids, as well as future Trunks, which would mean they would be above Piccolo before he fused with Kami as well. For the Saga, being an A tier means they are immensely powerful for the time, even if it's lower A tier. This means they can not only manhandle androids 19 and 20, but they can at least put up a decent, if uphill fight against our next contenders. In the middle to upper A tier, we have androids 17 and 18. With their infinite energy engines, they are obviously super powerful for the time they are introduced, and while Vegeta did a fair go against android 18, when she started getting serious, it was clear she was wearing him down. Now, Piccolo does state that Vegeta's main failing when they fight is the fact his energy is not infinite, but you can also tell from the panels that he gets in a few licks less than 18 throughout the fight, and that only increases as time goes on. And we can easily compare Vegeta and Android 18 versus Piccolo and Android 17. We can easily see that while Android 18 is a little bit bloodier from her fight against Vegeta, it does seem to be mostly cosmetic damage. Whereas it appears to me that Android 17 is clearly being far more damaged. That, and though 17 says that Piccolo's main failing is that he is losing energy as well, 17 looks far less happy fighting near the end of that fight than 18 does fighting Vegeta. However, it does say in the manga that 17 is slightly stronger than 18, and so I have Android 18 in the middle to upper A tier, but 17 is solidly in upper A tier, almost approaching S. And while we won't dive too deep into this because his power is probably the most explored and easiest to identify, considering he equates to 17 about, Piccolo fused with Kami is there with him, in upper A, and maybe even approaching lower S. The biggest question is who would have won between Piccolo and 17 had their fight continued. Personally, I think that despite Android 17's infinite energy engine, I believe Piccolo could have come out on top, like 6 times out of 10. Obviously, with his light grenade later on, he still had a vast amount of strength, and at the beginning of the fight, he had the upper hand, though you could make the argument that Android 17 had simply underestimated him at first. But I do believe Piccolo had the experience and the strength to take 17 out, even if it would have been a long, bloody battle, though if he had managed to do it, it would have taken so much out of him that Android 18 could have easily finished Piccolo off afterwards. Now, since we said we would go a bit further, I need to mention Initial Imperfect Cell, at least when he first fights Piccolo. Obviously, he is weaker than Piccolo, though still strong enough to be a somewhat troublesome opponent. I would put Imperfect Cell in lower A tier, alongside Goku and Vegeta, as when Cell escaped Piccolo, even after draining some of Piccolo's energy, when Cell sees Vegeta flying overhead, he notes that Vegeta is much stronger than he anticipated as well. And if Imperfect Cell was in middle or upper A tier, especially since he has the element of surprise there, he would have had little reason to not go up and try and absorb Vegeta then and there. Yes, you could make the argument that Piccolo would have sensed him, but it would have been like any other time that Piccolo and Tien flew to catch up to him and he disappeared again, except now he has an immense power boost. So it stands to reason he is around Goku and Vegeta's level when first introduced, in lower A tier. However, when we see him later, he is in S tier with Android 16, both being high enough above Piccolo and 17 to not feel too threatened by them, though again, both 17 and Piccolo could potentially provide at least a little bit of trouble. It's hard to tell. 17 does dodge Cell's tail for a hot second there, and Piccolo can tank a few of Cell's punches without being taken out, even though they obviously do hurt. But Cell clearly could kill them both as well. However, we also need to understand that Piccolo has lost a lot of stamina, and Android 17 has been damaged, so it's very possible they could have put up a better fight if they had not previously been locked in combat. The big question is Piccolo's light grenade, as it was clearly strong in Android 17's opinion, considering he leapt out of the way of the ensuing blast even though it wasn't even aimed at him, but Imperfect Cell was pretty much unharmed. However, we could simply say that Imperfect Cell either dodged the brunt of it, like Vegeta did with Kui's attack on Namek, or Piccolo was sufficiently weakened at that point that it did not matter very much. But even best case scenario, Imperfect Cell at this point is upper S tier compared to Piccolo and 17, who are in upper A or potentially lower S. Meanwhile, Android 16 is fighting Cell to a standstill, and I would argue he's even got the upper hand near the end of the fight, as he damages Cell and Cell has to resort to sneaking up on Android 17 to absorb him. And so both of them, Cell and 16, are in upper S tier for the arc. But particularly 16, since his strength was this way throughout the entire real Android saga, he just never showcased it until later. Alright everyone, that's every one of the fighters ranked. I hope you enjoyed the video. Now before I go, I want to read out all the names of my 16 patrons, as after my last video, 4 decided to sign up, which is immensely appreciated. And then after that, I will make a small announcement. Okay, so let me read these off real quick. Alright, we got Big Gangus, who was my first patron. Thanks so much, Big Gangus. Then we got Dylan. Then we got Toten Taz, who's always willing to talk to me about stuff. We got Don Dashi. We got Daniel. We got Zeitka, who is paying in Canadian dollars. Oh, we got Canadians here. Okay. I hear you got syrup up there. Then Nohamel, we got from Canada too. Cool. Nohamel also speaks a lot. I quite enjoy Nohamel. Also, we got Piggy 5990. Then we have Ellie, who I said hi to in one of my community notes. Thanks, Ellie. Then we got Ian. Then we got Cole. Then we got Who Else But Zane. I recognize his profile picture. He posts a lot. I think Who Else But Zane is the one that asked me to make my Kai video a few months ago. Then we got Stridency 168. I recognize his Patrick Star icon. Based. The inner machinations of my mind are an enigma. Then we got Human Person. Love the name. And then we got Big Sauce. Now, Big Sauce, actually a few of them, Big Sauce in particularly, but a few of y'all are actually paying more than the $250 dollar amount that I was asking y'all to pay, which I didn't even think was possible. I thought I had locked it to $250 and that was it, because I didn't want to be greedy. But some of you guys are paying $3, and Big Sauce is paying $5. So thank you so much to Big Sauce for that, and for honestly, thank you to all of you for just joining Patreon in general. But I didn't even think y'all could increase the amount. That was news to me when I saw that. And finally, for my 16th patron and newest one, we have Galax27. So guys, thank you so much for being my patrons. And if any of you guys want to join this list, it would mean the world to me. I have 16 now. I would hope to have 100 by the end of the year. I don't think I'm going to get 100 at this point. But, if you want to add your name to the list, every little bit helps. So I appreciate that so much. And I just want to say, cool. Those are my awesome patrons so far. And my Patreon is in the description below. Once I make a Discord for everyone, patrons will be given special roles, by the way. Also, speaking of Discord, on my other channel, in a couple of days, I am making a video talking about story structure and character writing, as a subscriber of mine named Quentin Billings 8837 has asked for writing advice, and when I asked specifically what he wanted me to talk about, he said story structure and character writing, and I think that's great. I'd love to talk about that, but that will be on my other channel, and it'll be in a few days. And the reason why this is connected to Discord is because I said I would make one if I reached 5,000 subs here and 1,000 on my other channel where I am posting that video. So subscribe there if you want other content from me, and if you care about learning anything on writing, drop on by when I release it. Okay guys, have a great day. I'll see y'all later.